Welcome everybody. Happy New Year. Happy 2021. Welcome to the January general meeting. I hope you all had a relaxing and wonderful New Year. If you haven't done so yet, please just take some time to mute yourself and again, sign into the chat. But I'm just going to go ahead and dive right into it. So today, at general meeting, we're going to kind of discuss a new partnership between Legal Aid and Center for Transforming Lives. So Legal Aid has received a grant to provide a wide variety of legal services to people experiencing or exiting homelessness or people facing eviction. And they'll be able to help with certain things that present barriers to stable housing, like criminal expunsions, eviction, defense, probate issues, etc. So CTL is set to serve as the portal for those referrals. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Monique Lopez Hinckley, who is the managing attorney for the Fort Worth branch of Legal Aid, so we can get started, and she can tell you guys a little bit about that.
Hi, good morning, you guys. Nice to see everybody. I'm looking at the numbers go up of participants. Some of you guys I've probably seen on other meetings. If I haven't before, it's nice to see you guys. And I understand that and I'm not sure who it was, but it sounds like we've spoken at one of your meetings before, maybe in the last 2 years, I think it was.
Yeah, about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it may have been Joni Balamut. She tends to do some of our outreach. And so I apologize if you've seen this slideshow before. We don't have too much change going on other than we do have grants coming in and out. And obviously this is a new grant. So I wanted to go over just kind of the big picture of what we do in case some of you are new to what we do. And then we'll kind of talk a little bit more about the grant, and I will try my very best to respect your time. I know that you all have a specific amount of time for this, and I can't remember, are we going to do chat questions? How did you want to do that?
Yeah, so as you're going through the presentation, if anybody has any questions, just throw them in the chat. TCHC staff and myself, we will be monitoring that chat to help you out with that and make sure we get everybody's questions answered.
Okay, great. All right. Can you share you have my PowerPoint, is that right?
I sure do. Let me do that. Is everybody able to see that okay? Be able to see, perfect, all right.
Okay, well, like I said, I am with Legal Aid of Northwest Texas, and you can go to the second slide. And I'm Monique. I'm the managing attorney at the Fort Worth branch, and I actually manage the Weatherford branch as well, in case you come across folks that need assistance in the more rural part of our service area. We do have an office out there. The other folks that are on the meeting today, I just want to touch real quick on that, is Brent Shellhammer is also on this meeting. He is the supervising attorney for the unit that will cover this grant. And so he's available if for some reason I'm not, or if the attorney that's assigned to this grant is not. The attorney that is assigned to this grant is also on this meeting, Melissa Wilkes. She will be housed at CTL doing the work that we anticipate this grant is going to cover. Her paralegal is also on this call. Her name is Patricia Musquiz, and so she's here as well. So the team that you will work with is going to be comprised of primarily Patricia and Melissa. And then Melissa has a bigger team, which is comprised of other attorneys, Brent, and me. So just so you guys know who we are. You see name, oh yeah, I've heard that name. Feel free to reach out. All right. For those of you that don't know, we actually cover 114 counties. Now, my office covers 7, Tarrant County being one of them. But we have about 28 offices in total. So if you come across a client that actually has an issue in a different location, you can still reach through our portal and we'll get you guys where you need to go. Don't think that just because the client had an issue in Abilene, that you have to necessarily call the Abilene office. We're trying to make it as easy as possible. And so just know that we are Northwest Texas. So it's kind of this area and then out to the west into the Panhandle. Okay, should have a map of that. All right, and so that's our service area. Sometimes this will come, you'll wonder, well, I don't know why my client have an issue. Well, you'd be amazed. The expunctions, non-disclosures, ODLs are often affected because they've got a ticket or they've got something going on in Plainview. They happen to have gotten into some trouble in Plainview, and we can file in Plainview. So that's not an issue as well either. Next slide. All right, so what do? Well, we only do civil law. We don't do anything criminal. Our only exemption to the criminal exemption is the non-disclosures and the expunctions. But the big picture is we help with disaster assistance, family law, landlord-tenant, disability rights, and all kinds of other stuff that you guys may or may not know about. So anything that is civil, that is affecting our client community, and that is not prohibited, we'll do it. All right, so this is an example. The TCHC grant, as y'all mentioned, is a new grant for us. We got it this past summer, and we were kind of scrambling to get to find the right team. And I believe that we have found the right team, and we're excited to move forward. But it is specifically, like you mentioned, to do with housing, barriers to housing, keeping folks from being homeless. And so anything that we can do to assist the client community in staying in their residence, or maybe getting something off of their criminal record that is prohibiting them from getting a lease, we do that. So this is kind of a list of what is specific to the grant. Not necessarily, I mean, it's a pretty good list. I don't know, some stuff could come up that we'd say, oh, you know what, I think we could cover that. We're going to play it by ear since this is new. Next. This is just kind of background information. We don't necessarily need to spend too much time here, but there are other legal aids in the area and in the state of Texas, but we're the 5th largest in the United States. And so we are used to high volume, but the other two are Trala and Lone Star. Again, if you needed a referral to the others, we could send them as well to the other legal aids. We don't handle, as you can see, malpractice cases, any class actions, assisted suicide, or personal injury. And like I said, no criminal matters except what I had mentioned on the expunctions, non-disclosures. This is kind of just an idea of what the difference is between the criminal law and the civil law. And again, this kind of just gives you a list of the things that we could handle in the Fort Worth office. Again, the Fort Worth office is going to be more well-rounded, I guess, in the kind of cases that they can take, because the grant, we have other grants, but the TCHC grant that we will be utilizing for this portal with the CTL and with the continuum of care is going to be more limited to housing matters than our other office would be. But that doesn't mean that we can't handle it in the other offices. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, if you've had a client apply for us before, you probably know that we have to look at eligibility whenever we do an application. And so the first thing, the first thing that we actually do, it's not on this list, but it's on one of the other lists, is ask about conflicts. We cannot take a case in which somebody has already popped up as an adverse party in our database. And so when you all talk to Patricia or send something through the portal to Patricia, she will look immediately at the names. And that'll be the first thing she checks. And so some of you guys may get an email back saying, we can't even do the application for this person because they're a conflict. But I just wanted to put that out there. But the second most important is obviously the income. They need to be income eligible. We screen everybody that calls. We take into account the household number. We take into account the actual status of a household. Like if somebody is married, but they're married to an abuser, we don't count the abuser's income. We don't count the abuser's asset. That way we try to get the applicant assistance despite what's going on with the abuser. Also, we look at whether or not they're actually married. We have different definitions of household. And so you'll hear different questions, or your clients will hear different questions about household income, that kind of thing. We also ask about assets. This can get a little confusing, but for the most part, we'll ask about bank accounts, vehicles, if there's more than one home, that kind of thing. Sometimes there can be more than one home for one reason or another, and it may or may not make them ineligible. It's just, again, we'll have to look at everything on a case-by-case basis. The citizenship or the other qualifying status is also the question that your clients will be asked. There are exemptions to U.S. citizenship, which are asylees, refugees, victims of crime, victims of domestic violence, but they've got to have an exemption or we cannot assist with the service. And it actually needs to be connected to the legal problem at hand. And then it's got to be a legal problem within the priority. So if somebody does call us or you send it something through the portal that is not within our priorities, we probably will not be able to take the application. We use the poverty guideline, as I'm sure you guys are very familiar with. When I talk to private attorneys, they have no clue what this is, but you guys are just like us, know exactly what this is. And so this is just an example of the money that is under the 2020 levels. And then kind of I mentioned the asset guideline. So it's 10,000 for one person plus 5,000 for every additional household member. And again, it depends on the definition of the household member. This is just more of what I said about the eligibility and citizenship. Again, if we have questions, we will certainly look at it. We do every day. We get a different situation in. I'll have my intake supervisor come and say, well, what do you think about this? And we'll kind of do a little bit of research, but we will never, or we will try our best never to do anything with a knee-jerk reaction. We're not trying to keep people out. We want to be able to help as many people as we can. So we will really take our time and look at each situation. I mentioned the priorities. So our board of directors actually is who determines our priorities. And our board is comprised of different people in the community, attorneys, client, anybody that could be actually qualified to be a client. And so it's comprised of different folks in the community. And I always put it out there, if you think you've got someone who maybe would want to be a board member, you might reach out to us. I mean, we are definitely looking for people that have their fingers on the pulse of the community, and I know that you guys do. So at some point you might think about that. Okay, some other examples. Again, this has more on the list than what we would probably be doing with our particular grant at CTL. But that being said, these are the kinds of things that we could do just in general in the office. And so the office that's going to be at the CTL location is a branch for all intents and purposes. I mean, it's a satellite office, but it is connected to the bigger office. The bigger office has another 13 attorneys that do this kind of work, that if for whatever reason Melissa's grant doesn't cover it, that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody else can't cover it. And so we don't want anybody to say, oh, I don't think we can, they're not going to take it. Let us make that decision. The only thing I would say is on the family law side, we really want to try and keep the family law cases coming in a different direction, not through the portal, because family law cases do tend to be more voluminous. And so we would ask that you guys send family law cases through a different phone number, and I've got that should be on here as well. The dreaded lack of resources. So I don't know if you all have had clients that have applied for us before, but I've been doing this for a really long time. And when I was a staff attorney and my folks, like advocates or caseworkers, would call me and go, my client got a letter that says you didn't take the case because of lack of resources. I'm like, I know I hate that phrase. I hate it. But just like you guys know, we cannot help everybody. I wish that we could, but we cannot. And so lack of resources is the term that is on the letter. that folks will get when the case maybe wasn't probably potentially meritorious, or maybe it was the 10th abuse case out of 20 that we saw, and it was in the middle and we couldn't take all of them. That was a terrible example, so sorry. You know what I mean? We see that we take the worst cases, and unfortunately, one of them may not have been up at the top. So lack of resources is that term. Now, does that mean that at some point they could not apply again? It does not. We are human. We occasionally miss something. We occasionally don't make the right decision. So if you legit think that maybe we didn't get it, but we didn't hear your client right, there's something called a reconsideration that would go to Brent in this case. And Brent would take a look at it and say, you know what, we probably need to look at this case a little harder. And so the one bite of the apple, there is no one bite of the apple. We will do our best to get it right. But that's the term you will hear from your clients. They didn't take my case, lack of resources. That's what that means. Kind of like what I said, because we are so big, we do things bigger in Texas. We have more people that don't qualify for us. I mean, so if you look at, we rank 47th in access to legal aid attorneys. We're the 5th largest in the country, and we are 47th as far as being able to assist people, because there's that many people in the state of Texas who qualify. And, this doesn't cover the numbers for 2020 and what COVID did. So I'm sure that we know, as well. There are people that didn't qualify before for your services or ours that qualify now and never thought that they'd be looking at this kind of assistance. So we get it. We even hired more people to handle evictions, because we knew that was a number one priority. And so we are in a really good position right now to help as many people as we can. Specifically, all this CARES money came in to help people not be homeless. And so we're there. And so these numbers are obviously 2019 numbers. Who knows what we'll see for next year once we get everything figured out. I keep mentioning other grants. And so we do have other grants for specialized areas. Some could cross over, obviously, with the TDHCA grant, and that's fine. Again, if she being Melissa, if Melissa comes across a case, it's got one issue that she can handle, but she realizes, oh, wait a minute, they might have a different issue. She's going to be issue spotting. And if she can open up another intake and send that person to someone else that can do a different type of case for them, then she's going to do that. I mean, we are going to try and take care of the problem as a whole, the client as a whole, so that we can knock out all the issues if we can. Thanks. So you've heard me say Melissa. So her name is Melissa Wilkes. She's going to, again, be housed at the Center for Transforming Lives. And Patricia is her paralegal. Patricia, I call her Patricia. I think Patricia is fine. She does speak Spanish. And so that is obviously going to be helpful. If you have a client that does not speak Spanish or English and it has a different language, we do have access to language line. So that's not a problem. We just obviously need to know kind of going in that we're going to need to use the language line. But Melissa comes to us with experience in the immigration field and has worked tirelessly with veterans. And so this position, I think, spoke to Melissa because it's probably, a lot of the veteran cases she saw probably faced similar issues that your client population has faced. And Patricia has actually worked for several years when we have another legal aid in Dallas. She worked over there she was the liaison for the bridge. And so she also has experience working with this client population. But those are their emails. Phone numbers are up in the air with this, we're going to have probably a ring phone number at some point. But for now, the email is the best way to reach out to them if you have questions. That is not, however, going to be the way necessarily to apply. We have a portal that is that's actually set up. We just started taking client applications through the portal last week. And I actually don't know that many have come through. So it is my understanding that an email will be sent to the coalition this afternoon with the link to the portal. Heather Lowe is the our point person. And so if for some reason it's not working or something goes haywire, I'm sure Heather can help you. You can certainly email Patricia or Melissa, but they probably don't have the ability to fix what's going on with the portal, but you can certainly reach out to them. All right, I don't know. Next slide. Okay, so if you've had clients before that have come to legal aid, you've probably had them apply, but again, in a different way. So for this particular grant, I mentioned that portal. The portal is going to be the way that all of these applications are done. The applications will come from a caseworker. They are not going to come from a client. So please do not send the link to your clients. We believe that it's going to be better to have a connection with the caseworker because certainly because it's new, we want to make sure that we're getting it done correctly. But we have an MLP program. We have a medical legal partnership with MHMR, and it's set up the same way. We have the caseworkers and the advocates do the referrals because it's a lot easier, I think, to keep in contact with the client. And so I think that's going to be the same here. If we don't like it and it doesn't work, we can change it. But for now, this is how we're going to do it. We want the caseworker, the advocate, whoever is doing the referral, it can't be the client. We'll come back to the questions at the end, I'm sorry. And so on that portal will be a Landwid application where you will need information about your client. I mean, it's a questionnaire that's pretty, it's not like super detailed, but it's going to give us enough information to kind of do the conflict check to figure out what's what. It is not going to be the financial aspect of it. It just kind of gives us a basis in which to start. So there will also be, my understanding is there's also going to be questionnaires for each kind of case. But I haven't actually gone in and looked at the portal. It's possible that Melissa has or Patricia has to see how it's working. I think Patricia had tried it early on. But just know that you will need information about your client. It's not just going to be a name and a date of birth. I mean, there's going to be more information that's needed. But it'll come through the portal. Patricia will be the one that follows up. She will be the person that contacts the client. Usually we do it by phone. Now I know that technology is sometimes difficult for our client community, and so we'll just kind of have to see how that goes. If maybe a caseworker's got a way to reach the client and they can do a three-way call, maybe that might work, but we'll work with you guys. We just want to at least get this started and see how it goes. But it will be Patricia that gets in touch with you guys. All right. Let me go back real quick on that other one. Obviously, we're probably all working remotely. We are working remotely. I believe that Patricia and Melissa are going to be in the office a couple of days a week. But again, please don't send your clients in there to see them. That's not what we envision happening. Certainly, if you're in the office, go say hello to them. I'm sure they're going to be very happy to meet folks that they're going to be working with day in and day out. Okay, sorry, go ahead. Again, this is kind of we pulled this actually from our agreement. And so it's kind of the same list that you saw earlier, but I just wanted to reiterate, this is the kind of cases that we are hoping to have come through the portal. Again, the point is to help people maintain housing, get housing, that is, we all know that there can be so many impediments to doing, to improving your situation, and jobs obviously are one of them. Transportation, if you don't have a license, you can't get to work to get your job, to get, to do your job. So we know they're all connected. We just want to try and do what we can to make a difference. Okay, next. I think that might be the end of, I've kind of already talked about this, but, well, that's not true. I'll take that back. So we talked about the pre-screen. So Patricia will do the pre-screen and the conflict check. The intake interview will actually be done by Melissa. So Melissa will then contact the client. Again, hopefully that will not be a problem. Again, I know that sometimes they don't have a phone available or technology available, but Melissa will be the one doing the interviews. And so she's going to ask them, what the issue is, if there's any deadlines, if they have paperwork. And so if you can assist us, if you happen to know you have a client that's got an eviction hearing coming up and they've given you the documentation, you might attach that to the application so that when Melissa talks to them, she can say, okay, I see you have a hearing on this date. If they maybe got a notice to vacate and it's easier for you to send us the documentation, please do that. We are, again, trying to streamline it so that we don't miss deadlines, so that we can get answers to the applicants as soon as possible. If there's not a deadline, then Melissa will take all of the intakes that she's gotten from the portal to the office, and each Thursday, unless there's a holiday, they will staff the cases. And so this is where if Melissa gets overwhelmed, she's not overwhelmed yet. Right now, she is ready to take on the world. But if she gets overwhelmed, like I mentioned, there are other attorneys that are capable of taking cases. So if Melissa has 10 cases that are accepts and she can take 5, the other 5 will be assigned. And Brent is the in charge of that staffing group. And if he knows they came through the portal and they are within our priorities and they are what we call takers, then they will be assigned to other attorneys outside of Melissa, only if she's feeling overwhelmed. If we determine at that staffing that it's not a case that we can take on for full representation, we'll give the client or the applicant as much information as we can, which includes obviously legal advice or any sort of brief service. Maybe all they need is a letter to the landlord that says, reminding them, hey, this person got a protective order and by law, this person can break their lease and move because the other party is continuing to come on property. And so a letter may be all that's needed. And so that would be a brief service. So that decision will be made in staffing on those Thursdays. If there's an immediate deadline or there's an emergency, Melissa has the ability, as all of our attorneys do, to call for an emergency staffing. And so she kind of sends out an email, hey, I need somebody to staff with me. 3 people will get on and say, okay, what do you got? And she'll say, hey, this lady has an eviction tomorrow. Notice is bad. It qualifies under the CDC. And they say, take it. And then she'll need to get all the documentation from the client before the hearing. All right, next. You kind of heard me mention the advice, brief service, full rep. So advice obviously is when your client or your applicant is going to get legal advice. It's going to be specific to their issue. And also kind of big picture stuff too. Hey, in general, the law says this. In your case, it applies this way. And so they'll kind of get an education as to what they need to know about their particular issue. Brief service is kind of what I mentioned. Maybe they do a letter or a phone call. Sometimes landlords just need to hear from an attorney and it solves the problem. And then the full rep is what I mentioned, if they accepted the case to go to court or something, or to file something, depending on what kind of case it is. All right, this is a little misleading. So this is our information, but it's not your information for the TDHCA grant. The reason this is important is because if a case you got does not qualify under that TDHCA grant, we still want you to be able to get to us to apply. So anything non-family law, your client can do an online application. The family law cases get through, but generally we try not to put them through because they, again, are so voluminous. The legal aid line, however, can take any question, any case. So if you come across a case that you're like, oh, this doesn't sound like it's for the TCHC grant, let me give the client this number, and they can call this number and they get legal advice on their issue, and then it gets referred to the appropriate office, which could be, you know, Denton. I mean, it could be that their issue is not my office, but it'll get sent there. And I can't recall, we have a specific Fort Worth number, and I apologize that I do not recall if it's on this. It is not. So let me give it to you, and I apologize. We do intake in the Fort Worth office Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of every week from 8:30 to 11 and 1:30 to 4. The phone number for that is 817-336-3943. And then you'll have to hit choice 3. And then it's kind of a long message and you kind of wonder what's happening here. I'm in another universe. That's still the right number. So the intake line will then be answered if it's during those times. If you leave a message, if your client leaves a message because they've been on hold for longer than they want to be on hold, they do check that message box and the voicemail, and they call people back on Thursday and Friday. So the last slide, I think, is my information. If you need me, you can shoot me. Generally, it's easier for an email. I'm in the office, but it's easier for me to respond to an email. But I don't mind a phone call. If I'm here, I'll answer it. If you leave me a message, I'll call you back. So that is it. Did I keep within the time frame that we needed to?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So we have a few questions.
Okay.
I think we're going to open it up for questions now. So if you want to unmute yourself, you have a question to ask, go ahead and do that. I'm going to scan the chat. So a link to the portal. Let me go ahead. I think I do have that link. Hold on just a second.
She sent that this morning. Is that right?
Yes. So this is the link. It is in the chat. Hopefully you guys can see that. Another question in there is, are there specific releases we need to have signed by a client?
So this always does kind of come up. I think that if you're going to be helping your client regularly, that's how, I mean, I know we have clients that need more help than others. We probably do need something from the client that says that we can release information or talk to y'all. We have some as well. So if you all already have some, we can certainly look at, you know, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. If everybody's got one, that's fine. Melissa, you're on the call. Do you have a preference of releases or how you want to do that? If a client tells you, I'm okay with my advocate being here and my case manager being here, what more do you want?
Yeah, so we're looking at, I know with CTL, they have a document that says that their client can share information with us. And then we're going to add something probably in the retainer agreement, you know, a separate paragraph, bold, underlined, saying, you know, client agrees to basically allow us to communicate with the referring organization. And we're going to name the referring organization specifically. So we're trying to cover all of that. Technically, a verbal release is okay, except, you know, you can't prove that up later if an issue comes up. So we plan on having it documented, and then specifically telling the client, hey, by accepting our services, we're going to be communicating with your caseworker over at, you know, whatever the referring agency is.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Wow, that's pretty good.
Doesn't look like it, and from the silence, I'm going to take it as a no. So if you do, you have her information. Did I hear something? Did somebody
Yes, I have a question.
go for it?
So what if you have a participant that you're not sure will benefit from this? Are we still able to send them to you guys and then you guys would determine whether or not they'll qualify, or do we need to have a general idea of what's going on before they're referred over there?
Can you give me a little bit, like give me an example when you say you don't know that they
Yeah,
will benefit from?
so what if a participant has an altercation and it's conflicting with getting an apartment? Would you guys be able to help with that? Or will it depend on what the altercation was?
So there's something on the criminal history, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Something had happened? Yeah, let us make that determination.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're not sure, let us decide there, because again, depending on what happened, there's a whole lot of questions. And so let us determine whether or not that's going to qualify for a non-disclosure or an expunction, depending on what happened.
Anybody else? Going twice. All right. If you guys do have any additional information, I'm sure Monique doesn't mind if you email her, or you can email me and I can get that information to the correct people. But just a few announcements before we let out. So remember, TCHC, we still have welcome home baskets for newly housed clients. We have outreach kits, excuse me. We do have mint phone cards. And if your client is in need of a phone, please let us know, because we are currently working on getting more of those. So you can, if you need any of those items, you can email me, Shannon@homewithhope.org. I believe my email is already in the chat, but you need to email me to schedule a pickup. Please don't just drop by, because we are working from home and at the office. Some of us, we want to make sure that staff is there and available to be there when you come to pick up. Also, we are kicking off the Leadership Academy again. So we are accepting applications. If you're interested in participating, you can go to our website, or we sent something out in the newsletter this morning. So please look over that. Does anybody have any additional? Eligibility is not limited to Tarrant County. That's the additional question I just got. I'm sorry.
So that's a great question. I'm trying to, I think that for Melissa's purposes, it might be, but not for legal aid's purposes. So again, send it through the portal. Patricia will make that determination if it's correctly, and if it's a Tarrant County issue or something else, and she'll send it to the main intake supervisor. So again, don't worry about that. But I think Melissa's is a Tarrant County restriction, just because of how the grant was assigned. But I do have a question looking at the different agencies. So we, obviously, this is new. Shame on us for not knowing more about this client community. I mean, for years I've thought, why are we not, doing more with this client community? So I think that Melissa and Patricia for sure are going to want to attend y'all's meetings. I think they want to know, just like you want to know what can we do for you, we want to know what can you do for us, because it makes sense. If we've got somebody that comes in and they actually say something about like, I need a phone. Well, we don't know who, we'll have to look at that. Well, you just told us that you guys have that ability. So I would say Melissa's probably going to reach out, Patricia will probably reach out to all of the agencies. And Shannon, do you have a true list? Like, I was trying to read the different folks that signed in so that she can make contacts with the different folks.
Yes, I can get with her and provide her something. Absolutely.
Right. I think that makes the most sense, that we all know what we can and cannot do for this community. I think that, again, we need to know what you know, because you know way more than we do about what's going on. This is exciting.
It is exciting.
I'm like ridiculously excited about this. So I hope you guys are too. Not all of you look excited. But it is Tuesday after a holiday, right?
It is a Tuesday. I think everybody's still trying to, get that win back. I will say, Monique, if you and your team have some time just to kind of hang out on the chat, on the call, I think we'll kind of dismiss and let everybody go. But if you guys have some questions that you thought of and you kind of want to talk to her a little bit more privately, I think we can all stay on the chat for a little bit. That way you can go ahead and ask your questions to her one-on-one, so to speak. So I will give you guys 20 minutes of your life back. I hope you enjoy your rest of the day. And as always, stay safe. And thank you for all that you guys do every day to make our COC run just as it does. We appreciate all the hard work that you do in the community. And we will stay on. That way, Ms. Monique can answer any additional questions you guys may have.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure.